Why did no one ever look twice at her? She moved through the halls unseen, her mop sliding across marble floors that gleamed brighter than the lives of the children who walked them. To most, she was just Maria, middle-aged, quiet, a cleaner whose accent was thick and whose sneakers squeaked with each step. To them, she was invisible. That was the point. But invisibility is a weapon, and Maria had been wielding it for 15 years. The morning light spilled across preparatory school, painting long shadows between ivy-clad walls and iron gates. A senator's son adjusted his blazer, a billionaire's daughter rushed to finish last-minute homework, and Madison, daughter of the President of the United States, blended seamlessly into the tide of privileged students. At least, that's what it looked like. Maria's eyes tracked every detail. The hesitation in a boy's step, the angle of a camera above the stairwell, the weight distribution in the arm of a new substitute teacher who carried himself just a little too stiffly. Every movement told a story. Every story carried risk. "Excuse me," a girl's voice cut through the chatter. Richardson, pharmaceutical fortune heir, pointed at a faint smear near a water fountain. "You missed a spot." Maria smiled with the humility of someone beneath notice. "I fix now." Rolled her eyes and walked away, her laughter sharp as glass. To her friends, Maria was background noise, someone to be dismissed. But Maria noticed more about than had ever noticed about her. She knew the girl's precise routine, the way she texted during math class, the lies she told her parents. Maria knew it all because knowing things kept people alive. She bent to clean the fountain, eyes never leaving the reflection in the steel. Behind her, the substitute teacher shifted his weight again, the faint bulge under his jacket betraying what he carried. A weapon, probably Secret Service, but Maria didn't take probably for granted. Not anymore. "Morning, Maria," called Mr. the head of maintenance, his smile as reliable as the clipboard he always carried. She kept her tone soft, her accent deliberate. "Heating system in Building C, it makes strange noise yesterday. Maybe you check." Frowned, already typing a note. "Strange noise like what?" Clicking every 30 seconds. Maria shrugged, feigning embarrassment. "Maybe nothing." No, that's good. We'll look into it." He didn't know what she knew. That a loose coupling in the HVAC system could be exploited. That shutting down the heating would force 40 minutes of disruption. That chaos always hides inside routine. Thought she was just being helpful. That's what everyone thought. By late morning, the corridors swelled with chatter. Maria emptied trash cans, polished floors, moved like a shadow among the young and untouchable. She was near the main office when she caught fragments of a conversation, vice principal speaking to Captain Noah Pierce, the head of security. "The Secret Service wants to change Madison's schedule again," sighed. Pierce shook his head. "Third time this month, poor kid can't live like this." Lowered her voice. "She's isolated enough already. This only makes it worse." Maria bent over her mop bucket, her ears straining. Schedule changes meant gaps. Gaps meant danger. She replayed every detail of the conversation, every possible vulnerability it created. To them, she was a cleaner with a broken accent. To herself, she was the last silent line of defense. No one knew her real name. Cross. Officially killed in action, Afghanistan. Body unrecovered. Mission buried. Her name inscribed on a wall of honor where no flowers were ever laid because no family had been told the truth. 15 years she had lived like this, erasing herself, burying instincts, pretending to be someone she was. But habits forged in blood never truly died. Near the library she paused. Madison sat alone, a book open in her lap but her eyes scanning, calculating. Maria recognized that gaze instantly. It was the look of someone who saw what others missed. Their eyes met across the room. For a flicker of a moment, Madison's stare tightened as though she were placing a puzzle piece. Maria broke the contact, pretending to adjust her cart, but something had passed between them. Recognition, not of faces but of awareness. By evening, Maria clocked out, walking to her rusted Civic among rows of polished SUVs. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message. No name attached. Package delivery scheduled for tomorrow. Recipient confirmation required. She stared at the screen. Her hand trembled, a tiny crack in the armor of Maria. 15 years of silence. 15 years of hiding. And now someone was pulling her back. She deleted the message, slid the phone into her pocket, and forced herself to breathe. In the mirror, she saw Madison walking across the pickup zone with her escort. The girl laughed at something one of the agents said, but her smile didn't hide the questions in her eyes. Too young to understand what it meant to be hunted. Too young to know what shadows stalked her family. Gripped the wheel, she had promised herself she would never step into this world again. But the message burned in her mind. Deliveries, packages. Someone was moving pieces into place, and Madison was the target. That night in her small apartment, she microwaved a frozen dinner and sat at a table meant for one. To the neighbors, she was Maria, quiet, alone. To herself, she was a soldier suffocating beneath her own disguise. She wanted to believe she could ignore the storm, but her instincts, the instincts that had kept her alive when her entire unit died, whispered otherwise. The world had a way of finding the people who tried to hide from it. When dawn broke, Maria walked the hallways with heightened senses. The school looked the same, but the air was different. A truck that had been parked across the street for days had shifted position. A substitute teacher returned, though his cover had expired. And two men in heating company uniforms wandered too far from their supposed repair zone, asking too many questions about cameras and schedules. Mr. appeared at her side again, clipboard ready. Maria, thanks for pointing out that heating problem. The repair crew found something serious. Could been dangerous. Her smile was tight. Is good they fix, safety important. Then his tone shifted, almost too casual. Say, you notice anything else? Strange people, vehicles, anything off? Someone had told him to ask. Maria let her face slip into hesitance as though debating whether to speak. Men who fix, they ask about pickup area, about cameras. She shrugged apologetically. Maybe normal, I don't know. His eyes sharpened. You did right, I'll tell Captain Pierce. As he hurried away, Maria's pulse thudded against her ribs. The men had revealed themselves too quickly. Amateurs wouldn't make that mistake. These were professionals, and if they were inside already, then the school and Madison were in grave danger. By lunch, Maria drifted toward the lockers. Madison was there, her composure frayed. "Excuse me, miss," the girl asked politely. "Could you help me reach the top shelf?" Maria handed her the book, their fingers brushing. Madison's eyes didn't leave hers. "You've been watching me," Madison whispered. Maria's mask almost slipped. She forced her accent. Sorry, I don't." "I notice things," Madison cut in. "And I've noticed you. You're always in the right place, always watching." Maria leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Be careful tomorrow. Sometimes the safest place is not where they tell you to go." Madison froze. The words didn't belong to a cleaner. They belonged to someone else, someone who knew. Before the girl could respond, her agents pulled her away. She glanced back, questions burning in her eyes. That night the school swarmed with agents, SUVs idling under lamplight, men speaking in clipped radio codes. Maria sat in her Civic, watching. Her phone buzzed again. "Delivery confirmed. Location change will be communicated." Her thumb hovered over delete. Not this time. She opened her encrypted contacts and typed a number she hadn't used in 15 years. She added a single word. "Compromised." The reply came at 3:17 a.m., a number she recognized. A voice that broke through time like a wound reopening. "Jesus Christ, Sam, we thought you were dead." Her real name rose like a ghost. "I was supposed to be," she whispered, "but we have a problem." Who do you call when the world believes you're dead? For 15 years, Cross hadn't spoken her true name aloud. And yet here it was, pulled from silence, spoken back to her through a line that shouldn't have existed anymore. She breathed, the name steadied her even as her pulse raced. On the other end, Colonel exhaled. Sam, if you're right about this, we're talking about something coordinated, presidential level, the kind of op that takes months, inside help. They're planning to move Madison tomorrow, she said flatly. It's a mistake. They're expecting it. They've built their timing around it. Silence pressed against the line. Wasn't a man easily stunned, but the weight in his pause said everything. What do you need? Information, extraction routes, who knows what? And she stopped, her voice lowering to something that carried old scars. I need to know if anyone's digging into me. Sam, he said, his tone grim, if your cover's blown. Then Madison's already dead, she cut in. Everything else is secondary. When the call ended, dawn pressed gray light through her curtains. She didn't bother sleeping. Instead, she laid every map of flat on her kitchen table, redlining possible ambush points, escape routes, blind spots. 17 ways to kill a convoy in suburban Virginia. 17 ways Madison could vanish without a trace. By the time the school bell rang Maria, quiet cleaner, walked in again. But beneath her uniform, Cross was calculating survival. Mr. intercepted her, clipboard in hand, his smile than usual. Maria, can we step into my office for a minute? The air sharpened instantly. A request like that was never casual. Inside the maintenance room stood Captain Pierce, posture straight, eyes that had seen combat, and a man in a suit too sharp for school grounds. His ID clipped clean, Secret Service. Maria, Pierce said carefully, this is Agent Hayes. He has a few questions. Hayes studied her like she was already guilty of something. Captain Pierce tells me you noticed unusual behavior with the repair crew. She nodded nervously, shoulders hunched like prey. They ask many questions about pickup area, about cameras. What kind of questions exactly? Maria repeated the details. Hayes's jaw flexed as he took notes. And how long have you worked in maintenance? His tone probed. 7 years, always cleaning, she looked down, twisting her hands. Before restaurants, houses. No family. Her eyes dimmed. Husband died, no children. The lie had been perfected over 15 years. Documents, records, stories polished smooth. But Hayes didn't stop starring. He wasn't convinced. Captain Pierce says you notice things others miss. Where'd you learn that? My papa, she said quickly. He was carpenter, teach me details. Hands, tools, things like that. Hayes's gaze narrowed. It was plausible, but the silence that lingered told her he wasn't letting go. Miss, he said finally, be extra vigilant today. Anything unusual, you tell Captain Pierce immediately. Understood. I help. When she stepped back into the hall, her lungs burned with the effort of staying small. Hayes's suspicion wasn't fatal, not yet, but suspicion was a spark. Sparks turned into fire. And Madison was standing right in the middle of it. By midday, swarmed with discreet strangers in ill-fitting civilian clothes. Teachers, parents, even the cafeteria staff seemed doubled. Maria, invisible Maria, moved between them, scrubbing, mopping, pretending not to see the glances exchanged between earpieces. But she noticed something they didn't. The heating repair truck, again, parked this time with a clear to the main entrance. Her phone buzzed in her apron, a coded text from Watchers are being watched, dance starts soon. Her reply came fast, negative extraction, staying for the dance. If she left now, Madison would vanish. Cross had buried herself once before, but she refused to bury a girl who hadn't even lived yet. That afternoon, as the lunch bell echoed, she caught Madison by the lockers. The girl's eyes lit with recognition, not the polite kind, the sharp kind. Maria said softly, slipping a folded note into the girl's book, "You dropped this." Madison unfolded it discreetly. The words were block letters, Nothing like Maria's broken script. They are moving you during lunch. It's a trap. When I signal, run to janitor's closet B12. Trust no one else. Her head lifted slowly. No panic, no fear, just sharp intelligence her detail underestimated. Thank you, she whispered. Maria's chest tightened. The girl believed her, trusted her. But at the far end of the corridor, Agent Hayes leaned against the wall, watching, eyes narrowing. Maria knew the look, the beginning of a hunt. The end game was coming. When the lunch period began, the air itself felt charged. Students streamed into the cafeteria, oblivious. Teachers shouted over chatter. Agents shifted into subtle formations, their jackets stiff with concealed weapons. Maria stood by a window, rag in hand, heart beating with quiet violence. She counted 8 federal agents shadowing Madison. Hayes's orders crackled through radios. Falcon 1, maintain formation. Package mobile in 5. Her phone buzzed again. Cleaning crew arriving, service entrance, maintain schedule. She looked up. A white van rolled to the back lot. Metropolitan Maintenance Services printed neatly on its side. 3 men emerged with rolling carts of industrial supplies. But their steps were too even, too disciplined, not cleaners, operators. Her stomach dropped. The attack wasn't on the convoy, the attack was inside. She made her choice, pulled the fire alarm. The shriek split the air, scattering students into rehearsed evacuation lines. Teachers them toward exits. Smoke doors clanged open. But the federal agents didn't evacuate. They tightened around Madison, moving her toward the front, exactly what the kidnappers expected. Maria's instinct screamed. Agent Hayes, her accent vanished, her voice cut like a blade. You're walking into an ambush. Every head turned. Hayes spun, gun in hand. Who the hell are you? She dropped the mask, posture snapping upright, eyes like steel. There are hostiles in this building. Your route is compromised. How do you know? The lights died. Emergency red glow bathed the hall. Smoke grenades hissed. The air filled with choking haze and sudden blasts. Maria grabbed Madison's wrist. B12 now. They vanished into the chaos. Behind them, gunfire cracked. Agents shouting. Grenades exploding. Children screaming in confusion as staff forced them outside. But in the dark smoke, professionals hunted. Who are you? Madison panted as they ducked into the janitor's closet. His eyes were hard, her voice flat. Someone who's going to keep you alive. She pulled the panel in the back wall, exposing the narrow service tunnel. Crawl. Madison's throat tightened. That's not. Crawl or die, cut in. The girl obeyed, sealed the panel and followed into the suffocating. Above them, boots thundered. Radios cracked. Voices cold and efficient. Target confirmed. Basement sweep initiated. Madison whispered, they'll find us. I know, said, her voice was calm, dead calm. Which is why we're not hiding forever. They reached the basement maintenance room, pipes hissing, boilers humming, shadows stretching. Pushed Madison behind a tank, scanning exits, recalculating. Her phone buzzed, a message from. Federal teams delayed, roadblocks 12 minutes, you're on your own. Exhaled, steadying herself. 12 minutes might as well be eternity. She turned to Madison, voice quiet but sharp. Listen to me. You follow my orders, no questions, no hesitation. Understand? The girl's eyes locked on hers. She nodded. You're military, Madison whispered. His jaw tightened. Was, a long time ago. Now I'm just someone who refuses to let you die. The sounds of boots echoed closer. The hunt was narrowing. And Cross, ghost, exile, invisible woman, shifted her stance. For 15 years she had pretended to be dead. But tonight, she was going to remind the living why ghosts were feared. What happens when a ghost decides to fight? The basement air was heavy with dust and heat. Pipes hissed like serpents above them. Madison crouched low, her breath sharp and uneven. Moved differently, shoulders squared, eyes cutting through shadows, body coiled with lethal precision. "Who are you really?" Madison whispered again. His answer came without hesitation. "My name is Cross. 15 years ago I was Delta Force, officially dead, but the dead have their uses." Madison's throat tightened. The cleaning lady, the quiet ghost in the halls, wasn't who she seemed, not even close. A thud rattled the steel door above the basement stairs. Boots pounded. Voices barked coordinates through radios. The hunt was here. His hand slid across the wall, fingers pressing against a hidden latch she'd built months ago. The tool cabinet clicked open, revealing supplies that had no business being in a prep school basement: tactical radios, med kits, weapons, and spare ammunition. "You've been planning for this," Madison whispered, half in awe, half in fear. "I've been planning for something," replied, loading a sidearm, "because people like your father make enemies, and enemies never wait forever." A slam. The basement door exploded inward. Flashlights cut through the smoke. Figures advanced with methodical precision. His eyes narrowed. "Stay behind the boiler. Don't move until I tell you." The first man through never had a chance. Rose from cover like a phantom, her weapon steady, her shot clean. A suppressed crack, a body dropped. The second followed, 2 rounds to the chest before he even understood what he'd walked into. But these weren't amateurs. The rest adapted instantly. Smoke grenades rolled, filling the basement in choking gray. Thermal optics flickered across beams. Recognized the tactic. They were fighting like soldiers. "Stay down," she hissed at Madison, then melted into the maze of pipes and shadows. Gunfire shredded steel above her, sparks spitting across the concrete. Slipped wide, flanking like muscle memory. She moved with the ghost-like precision of someone who had spent years hunted by professionals and surviving anyway. Her radio buzzed, a voice she knew. "This is Overwatch. Federal teams delayed, roadblocks confirmed. You are weapons free." The words hit hard. For 15 years had lived silent, unseen, careful not to draw blood. But now, weapons free, authorized. She flanked right, her shot snapping clean through a thermal scope's glow. The operative dropped, his device clattering across the floor. Another burst of fire pinned her down, concrete biting chips near her head. "Bravo 2 is down," a voice shouted. "Target is not civilian, repeat, not civilian." "Protocol 7, another ordered. "Elimination authorized." His pulse hardened. "Protocol 7. They weren't here to capture anymore, they were here to kill." From behind the boiler, Madison's voice shook. "They're military, aren't they?" "Worse," muttered, reloading. "They're professionals, which means someone inside fed them every detail." The implication hung like a blade. Betrayal inside Madison's own protection detail. Gunfire raked the pipes again, steam hissing into the haze. Shot the valve, scalding vapor erupting into a screen. She shifted position, weaving through the basement's mechanical jungle. A shot to an electrical panel plunged sections into darkness. Every corner of infrastructure turned into a weapon. But they were too many, too fast, too coordinated. Her phone buzzed with another message. Again. "Hostile count, 12 to 15. This is bigger than we thought." His jaw tightened. A dozen operators against one ghost and a teenage girl. The math didn't work, but she had never played by math. "Madison," she hissed, sliding back to the girl. "Listen carefully, you trust me?" Yes, no hesitation, just faith in the stranger who had saved her twice already. "When I say move, you run, don't look back." "And you?" "I'll be right behind." It was a lie. Both of them knew it. But survival often depended on lies spoken with conviction. The stairwell above shook again. New voices, the demolition team. Froze. She knew that sound, the metallic click of charges being set. Her chest went cold. They weren't just here to kidnap. They were prepared to bury the school. She caught one operator by surprise, her gun muzzle pressed to his temple. "How long?" she hissed. The man's jaw locked. She pressed harder. Timer, soldier, how long? His voice cracked. 60 seconds. She swore, stripped his vest, shoved him to the floor. 60 seconds until the West Wing collapsed. 60 seconds until Madison's body became collateral damage. She spat into her radio. They've set thermal charges, collapse imminent, I can't stop it. Do what you can. Federal teams still 4 minutes out. 4 minutes, 4 lifetimes. His mind raced. She couldn't disarm, not trained for it, but she could disrupt. Improvised tactics were the backbone of survival. She hauled Madison to her side, voice sharp but calm. When I say run, you run to the parking lot. Don't stop. Don't argue. What about you? His eyes flickered with something heavy. I've been dead 15 years. This is just catching up. Madison's breath caught. She wanted to argue, to scream, but the look in his eyes silenced her. A soldier's eyes, a promise unspoken. 10 seconds. Jam the stolen explosives against the utility tunnel's grate. If she could force the blast downward, maybe, just maybe, the building wouldn't collapse. 5 seconds. She shoved Madison toward the stairs. Now run. The world split. Fire roared. Steel screamed. The basement convulsed. Concrete shattered into dust and debris. For long moments, nothing existed but thunder and smoke. When opened her eyes, she was buried beneath rubble, ears ringing, blood dripping down her temple. The basement was half destroyed, twisted steel jutting like broken ribs. Her first thought wasn't survival, it was Madison. Status, she croaked into the radio. Static, then's voice, package secure, federal teams have her. Her chest loosened with relief. She coughed hard, crawling out from beneath a slab. Madison was alive. That was all that mattered. But she wasn't safe, not yet. Footsteps echoed in the rubble above. Not rescue, too precise, too disciplined. The cleanup crew. Her gun clicked empty. She reloaded with shaking hands. Blood smeared across her cheek. Her vision blurred, but her resolve sharpened. For 15 years she had hidden in the dark, pretending death was her only refuge. Now, crawling through smoke and fire, she realized something brutal and liberating. Death hadn't claimed her yet, and maybe it never would, not until she chose. She lifted her weapon, jaw tight. Come on, she whispered into the broken air. Let's finish this. And for the first time since Afghanistan, Cross felt alive. How do you explain yourself when your very existence is a lie? The basement was smoke and ruin. Heat radiated from cracked pipes. Steam curled through the air, carrying the metallic sting of blood. Sat against a slab of fallen concrete, chest heaving, weapon limp in her hand. She listened, not for gunfire that was gone now, but for footsteps, and there they were, boots disciplined, voices layered with command. Federal response, clear left. Team 2, sweep the boiler sector. Not kidnappers this time, rescue. Laid her pistol carefully on the ground, hands open, palms visible. She had been in enough raids to know how it looked from the other side. One wrong twitch, and she would die not as a ghost, but as a mistaken target. Federal agents, a voice bellowed, sharp and commanding. Identify yourself. Force strength into her voice. Cross, former Delta Force, unarmed. A ripple of silence followed. Then the sound of safeties clicking, weapons lowering. Cross, the voice cut closer. You're supposed to be dead. The smoke parted as a man stepped forward. Agent Hayes. His suit was torn from the chaos upstairs, but his eyes were sharper than ever. He studied her as if she were both a threat and a miracle. Either works, said, voice dry. But Maria just died in this basement. Hayes crouched, scanning the ruin around her, the fallen hostiles, the shattered charges, the jury-rigged blast pattern that had saved the building. His tone carried disbelief, but also something else. Respect. You stopped them. I delayed them, she corrected. Long enough for your people to pull Madison out. That's all that mattered. Agents swarmed, cataloging evidence, securing weapons, pulling bodies from rubble. Among the noise, one detail carried above the rest, a call over the radio. Agent Hayes, the package is safe, requesting to speak with the janitor, immediately. His throat tightened. Madison. Hayes gave her a long look. She's asking for you by name. Interesting request for someone who's just a cleaner. Pushed herself upright, pain stabbing through her ribs. People see what they need to see, until they don't. They moved upstairs, past cordons of federal teams and local police. The halls that had once carried chatter of students now echoed with radio codes and heavy boots. The school was no longer a school. It was a crime scene. Outside, floodlights blazed against the night. Media swarmed behind barricades. The flashing red and blue of emergency vehicles turned the school's brick walls into a fractured carnival of color. Madison sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a thermal blanket, hair tangled but eyes steady. The moment she saw, she pushed past a medic's protest and walked straight toward her. "You're alive," Madison said, voice breaking just enough to betray the fear she had carried. Gave a faint, tired smile. "Harder to kill than I look." The girl stepped closer, voice low, intimate. "I need to know, were you assigned to protect me, or did you choose to?" The question cut deeper than any wound. Hesitated. She had lived 15 years hiding from truth, from names, from choices. But Madison's eyes, sharp, searching, demanded more. "I chose to," said softly. "No orders, no authorization, just choice." Madison's eyes glistened, and for a moment the chaos around them dissolved. Just a girl, and a woman who refused to let her die. Then another voice intruded, "Miss Cross." The crowd parted as Director Michael Reeves of the Secret Service approached, flanked by senior officials whose presence radiated power. He carried himself like a man who had been briefed on something far larger than a failed kidnapping. Agent Hayes stiffened. "Sir, you know her." Reeves's eyes didn't leave. Agent Hayes, meet Cross, former Delta Force, presumed killed in action during Operation Ghost Watch, one of the most classified individuals in our database. The words rippled through the gathered agents like shockwaves. Whispers rose, then stilled. Straightened. "Then I suppose you know I'm not under arrest." Reeves's expression was unreadable. "That depends. The president would like to speak with you, personally." The weight of it settled like stone. She had lived in shadows so long she had forgotten what it meant to stand in the light. And now the light was about to be blinding. Madison's voice cut through again, softer, urgent. "Whatever happens next, don't let them erase you again." His jaw tightened. "Not this time." They walked to the waiting SUV, the world closing in, agents, cameras, floodlights, whispers. For the first time in 15 years, Cross was no longer invisible. The drive to Washington was silent. Stared out the tinted window at the blur of highways, each mile pulling her further from the life of Maria, deeper into a reckoning she had postponed for over a decade. By the time the convoy pulled through the White House gates, dawn was breaking, staining the horizon in pale gold. The SUV stopped outside the West Wing. Reeves gestured. "This way, Miss Cross." The corridors inside were quiet, reverent, lined with portraits of presidents who had carried their own secrets, their own ghosts. His boots echoed softly against polished floors. She felt the stares of staffers, whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Then the door opened, the Oval Office. President Jonathan Pierce rose from behind the resolute desk. His shoulders carried both the weight of the nation and the personal tremor of a father whose daughter had nearly been taken. "Cross," he said, voice low, steady, heavy with gratitude and questions. "I understand I owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "You owe me nothing," she said quietly. "Your daughter's alive, that's enough." But the president's eyes lingered, sharp and calculating. "It's not enough, because tonight I learned my government leaks from the inside, and your presence in this story is not an accident." The room tightened. Reeves, the national security advisor, and a CIA deputy, all leaning in, their faces set, stood in the center, a ghost dragged into daylight, surrounded by people who decided fates. She realized then, the battle in the basement was just the beginning. The real war was in these rooms where truth was currency and loyalty was as fragile as breath. The president's voice carried the weight of command. "Miss Cross, I want you to tell me everything." And for the first time since Afghanistan, Cross prepared to tell the truth. What do you tell a president when the truth itself is classified? The Oval Office was silent, heavy with expectation. Cross stood at its center, her hair still streaked with smoke, her hands trembling only when she tucked them into fists. The president waited. Reeves stood stiff behind him. The others leaned forward, pens ready to transcribe history. 15 years ago, she began, her voice steady but low, I was part of a mission called Ghost Watch. Officially, it never happened. Off the record, it was the most dangerous operation Delta ever sanctioned. She paused, the words fighting to stay buried. But Madison's face, alive, unbroken, gave her the courage to drag them out. We were deployed to extract an asset in Helmand Province. High value, with intel on a network no one wanted to admit existed. My team, 12 of us, went in under cover of night. It was supposed to be routine. It was. Her gaze fell to the carpet. She could still smell the dust, the gunpowder, the blood. They knew we were coming. Every angle was covered. Mortars cut our comms. Half the team was dead in the first 2 minutes. The rest we fought, but it was a slaughter. Someone had fed them our route, our timing, our call signs. The room absorbed her words with grave silence. I was the only one who made it out. Crawled 3 miles through desert scrub with half a lung left, carrying intel I couldn't even be sure was real. By the time I got back to base, they had already listed me KIA. Body unrecovered. Mission burned. The president's brow furrowed, and they left you there. They didn't just leave me, said, her jaw tightening. They erased me. No debrief. No inquiry. The report said I never survived long enough to return. Because acknowledging me meant acknowledging the leak. And acknowledging the leak meant admitting someone in this city had traded American lives for information. A long, sharp silence stretched. Reeves's voice finally broke it. So you stayed invisible. Nodded. The Pentagon gave me a death certificate, so I gave them a ghost. Maria was born and Cross disappeared. The national security advisor leaned forward. And you think the same network that burned you is behind last night's attack? His eyes locked on his. I don't think, I know. They've been patient, embedding themselves deeper, waiting for a high-value target. And there's no higher value than Madison. President Pierce exhaled slowly, his hands clasped on the desk. So you're telling me my daughter's life was almost taken by the same betrayal that killed your team 15 years ago? Yes, said. And if you want her safe, you need to stop pretending your house isn't on fire. The room bristled. Officials exchanged tense glances, but Pierce didn't flinch. What do you suggest, Miss Cross? Hesitated. Suggesting meant committing. Committing meant exposing herself beyond repair. But the choice had already been made the second she pulled Madison into that. You put me back in, she said quietly. Not officially, not on paper. As far as the world knows, I stay dead. But off the record, I track this network down the way I should 15 years ago, before they make another move. The CIA deputy shook his head. This is reckless. She's compromised. She's been out too long. Reeves silenced him with a look. Compromise doesn't take out 12 armed operatives with improvised explosives. Pierce studied her, his gaze sharp but searching. Why do this? Why not stay hidden, stay safe? His throat tightened. The answer was buried in memories she hated, but Madison's voice from the ambulance echoed inside her. Did you choose to protect me? She lifted her eyes. Because I lived when my team didn't. Because I buried myself to survive. And because for 15 years I've been carrying the guilt of not finishing what we started, protecting Madison was never about orders. It was about redemption. The words hung like smoke, heavy, unshakable. Pierce leaned back, his expression unreadable. Then his tone softened only slightly. Sometimes the people who carry guilt are the ones I trust most, but this, he gestured to the room, this will stay between us. My daughter's safety, this network, and your survival depend on it. Nodded once. Good, Pierce said, standing. Then we move forward quietly. As the officials filed out, Reeves lingered, his eyes locked on hers. Cross, understand something. If you step into this again, you don't get to walk away twice. You finish it or it finishes you. Her voice was steel. I've been finished before, still breathing. When the room cleared, Madison slipped in. Still wrapped in a blanket, still pale, but her eyes burned with restless questions. They said you were telling them what happened, she said softly. About before, about why you're here. Swallowed hard, some of it. Madison stepped closer. Do you ever regret it, fighting when you could walked away? The question carved deep. Thought of her team's last moments, of the silence after their screams. She thought of 15 years of empty nights, living in the skin of someone she was. Yes, admitted, every day, but regret doesn't change what's in front of you, and right now what's in front of me is you. Madison blinked fast, her voice breaking. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be in the middle of this. Touched her shoulder gently. Strength isn't something you feel, it's something you do, and sometimes it's quiet, invisible, just like I've been, but it's there, always. Madison's eyes glistened, but she nodded. Reeves reappeared at the door. We've arranged a safe house. Low profile, we move in 20. His gaze flicked between them. Both of you. Raised an eyebrow, both. President's orders, Reeves said. He trusts you more than anyone right now, which means you stay by her side until this is over. For a moment wanted to argue, to push back, but the look in Madison's eyes silenced that impulse. For 15 years, she had hidden from the world. Now, for the first time, she realized the world wasn't letting her hide anymore. That night, as the convoy rolled toward the undisclosed safe house, sat in the back beside Madison. The girl leaned against the window, exhaustion tugging at her eyes, but her hand rested near, as though tethering herself to the one person who hadn't let her fall. Outside, the roads were dark, the night thick with silence, but inside a storm raged. Operation Ghost Watch wasn't finished. The network hadn't just resurfaced. It had adapted, infiltrated, and waited, and the only way to face it was to step fully into the fire she had once escaped. She closed her eyes, her thoughts a quiet confession no one else could hear. Sometimes survival isn't living. Sometimes survival is the beginning of the fight you tried to avoid. And Cross was done avoiding. How safe is a safe house when the enemy knows how to wait? The convoy rolled through back roads and silent stretches of Virginia countryside, headlights carving tunnels of light through fog. Madison dozed against the window, the weight of exhaustion finally pulling her under. Didn't sleep. Couldn't. Her eyes tracked every shadow on the road, every car that lingered too long behind, every rustle of movement beyond the glass. The SUVs finally turned down a gravel drive, pulling into the shadow of an old colonial farmhouse. Remote, thick tree line, guarded by agents whose posture betrayed military roots. Floodlights swept the yard as the convoy rolled to a stop. Home for the next few days, Reeves said quietly as he opened the door. His face was lined harder now. He wasn't offering comfort, he was setting boundaries. Inside, the farmhouse had been stripped of charm. Windows sealed, reinforced locks on every door. A command post established in the kitchen, wires trailing across antique wood floors. Screens glowed with live surveillance feeds. The place smelled of coffee, gun oil, and fresh paint. Madison stirred awake, blinking. This doesn't feel like a house. It's not, said flatly. It's a perimeter with furniture. Reeves's team began their sweep. Agents checked every room, noticed small details. A scuff near a back window, too fresh. A sensor angled slightly off. Nothing glaring enough to accuse, but enough to unsettle. She said nothing, not yet. Trust was a scarce currency here. Later that night, Madison sat on the edge of her makeshift bed, her hands twisting the edge of the blanket. "I feel like a prisoner." Sat across from her, arms folded. "Better a prisoner than a target." "That's not living," Madison whispered. His chest tightened. The words echoed her own thoughts, 15 years of hiding, of breathing without living. She leaned forward, voice softer. "You're right, which means you can't just wait for people to protect you. You need to learn how to protect yourself." Madison looked up uncertain. "Like weapons?" "Not yet," shook her head. "First, awareness, the little things, details everyone else ignores." She picked up a glass from the nightstand, turned it slowly in her hand. "When you walk into a room, know where the exits are. Count them. When someone talks to you, watch their hands, not just their eyes. Hands tell the truth faster than faces." Madison nodded, absorbing. His tone deepened. "And never, ever assume the person closest to you isn't a threat. Trust must be earned every second, every breath. Do you understand?" Madison swallowed hard. "I think so." Handed her the glass. "Then prove it. Where?" "The nearest exit." Madison glanced around, pointed to the side door. "Good," said. "And what about my hands?" Madison studied them. "You're tense. Your knuckles are white, which means you're ready for something." Allowed the faintest of smiles. "Not bad." Their lesson ended with Madison's eyelids heavy, her head sinking back into the pillow. For the first time since the attack, the girl seemed steadier. But didn't sleep. She moved through the farmhouse in silence, watching the agents, listening. Reeves's men were competent, too competent. Their communication was clipped, professional, almost rehearsed. But one detail gnawed at her. The camera feed for the south tree line flickered, static interrupting the image every few minutes. When she asked about it, an agent shrugged. "Bad wiring, we'll fix it in the morning." Said nothing, but her gut told her otherwise. Ghosts trusted instincts more than assurances. Hours later, footsteps approached the back hall. Light, careful, not patrol-like. Followed in silence, barefoot, her shadow hugging the wall. She caught him near the utility room, an agent she hadn't seen in the convoy. He crouched over the circuit box, fingers moving fast, too practiced. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice low, flat. The man froze. Then slowly he stood, a sheepish smile crossing his face. "Camera interference. Reeves asked me to check." Her eyes narrowed. "Reeves is asleep, and you're left-handed, but you've been carrying your holster right all night." The smile faded. His hand twitched toward his sidearm. Moved first. One step, one strike, disarming him in a blur. She pressed his own weapon to his ribs, eyes cold. "Who sent you?" He said nothing, just smiled again, a smile without fear, the smile of someone who had already done their job. Then he lunged, triggering a blade hidden in his sleeve. Twisted, driving him hard against the wall. The blade scraped past her shoulder. She pinned him, eyes blazing. "Who sent you?" she repeated. His lips parted, one word escaped. "7." Then his body went slack, his eyes glassy. Poison capsule, dead before he hit the floor. Stood over him, chest heaving. Not a random infiltrator, a planted operative, inside Reeves's team. She dragged the body into the utility room, locking it tight. Wiping the blade cut on her shoulder, she whispered into her radio. "Reeves, we've got a breach. One of yours. South treeline feed was tampered with. You need to lock this place down now." Static, then Reeves's sharp reply. "Understood," moving. But's gut tightened. If one was inside, there were more. And Reeves's loyalty itself was a question mark. By dawn, Madison woke to find still seated near her bed, weapon across her lap, eyes red but unblinking. "Did you sleep at all?" Madison whispered. No, said simply. The girl hesitated, then asked, why do you care this much about me? Looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly she answered, because 15 years ago I couldn't save the people who trusted me. I'll burn before I let that happen again. Madison's eyes softened, a mix of gratitude and sorrow. But outside the farmhouse walls, the storm was tightening. Ghost Watch's betrayers hadn't just resurfaced. They were already inside the circle, and the safe house wasn't safe anymore. What happens when the walls meant to protect you become the cage that kills you? The safe house was still in shadow when the first shot cracked. A clean, sharp sound, silenced, but close enough to shatter any illusion of safety, was already moving before Madison sat upright in bed. Stay down, she hissed, dragging the girl off the mattress as a bullet punched through the headboard. Splinters rained across the blanket where Madison's chest had been seconds before. Shouts erupted downstairs, agents barking orders, the thunder of boots across old floorboards. Reeves's voice rose above the chaos. We're under attack, secure the principal. But's blood turned cold. The cadence was wrong, too even, too calm. She had heard men under real fire. Reeves's tone was practiced, not panicked. This wasn't defense, this was orchestration. She grabbed Madison's wrist. We're leaving now. The farmhouse groaned with impacts. Windows shattered. Smoke hissed through vents, a coordinated breach. Out the back, Madison asked, breath tight. No, they'll expect that. Shoved a dresser against the door, then opened the attic crawl hatch. Up. They climbed, the wood creaking under their weight. The air smelled of dust and old insulation. Below them, the sound of boots grew heavier. They're sweeping rooms, whispered. 4-man teams, close quarters formation, they know this layout. Madison's voice trembled. Reeves sold us out. Hesitated not because she doubted, but because admitting it aloud sealed the betrayal. He's not alone. This network's been feeding off trust for 15 years. That's how they win. The attic stretched low and narrow, beams thick with cobwebs, pulled Madison toward the far end where the insulation thinned. She slammed her boot once, twice, until the wood gave way. Cold night air poured through a jagged hole in the roof. Go, she ordered. Madison slid through, dropping onto the slanted shingles. Followed, rolling into the dark. The roof groaned beneath them. Floodlights swept the yard below. Armed silhouettes patrolled with formation too precise to be federal agents. Instincts sharpened. She counted. 12, no, 14, and still more inside. This wasn't an assault team breaching a safe house. This was the safe house. They're everywhere, Madison whispered. Scanned the tree line, eyes locking on a sliver of darkness between the beams of light. A drainage ditch half hidden. A slim chance. On my count, she whispered. Run low, don't stop. If I say drop, you drop. Madison nodded, her face pale but eyes hard. She was learning fast. They crawled along the roofline as shouts echoed below. Target not located. Sweep the upper levels. Dropped first, landing soft in the grass. Madison followed, her knees buckling but holding. Together they sprinted low, weaving through shadows. Halfway to the ditch, a beam of light swept across them. Contact. Gunfire erupted. The ground spat dirt and sparks, shoved Madison flat. Rounds tore overhead, shredding branches. Returned fire, 2 sharp cracks, 2 silhouettes dropping in the floodlight. But more voices rose, more boots pounded. The net was closing. Move, she barked. They dove into the ditch just as bullets chewed the soil behind them. Mud soaked their clothes, icy water biting skin. Shoved Madison forward, crawling through the shallow trench that carved toward the tree line. Madison's breath was ragged. Where are we going? Anywhere they're not, said, her tone clipped. Behind them, a voice shouted over radio comms. They're in the ditch, push them east. Froze, push them east, not chase, not kill, heard, which meant there was a trap waiting. She veered hard left, dragging Madison with her, cutting across the trench into thicker brush. The enemy's gunfire adjusted late, peppering the wrong direction. For the first time, a sliver of space opened. They burst into the trees, lungs burning, branches slapping against their faces. Scanned constantly, reading the land, mapping routes in instinctive flashes. Creek bed north. Old fence line west. Open field east, death. North, she decided. Follow the water, it kills their thermals. They splashed into the creek, the freezing current sucking at their legs. Madison stumbled, teeth chattering, but kept her upright, whispering constant commands. Step where I step. Breathe slow, keep your head low. The forest closed around them, thick with shadows. Behind the safe house was a storm of light and gunfire. Ahead, only dark. Minutes bled into hours. The creek carried them deeper, farther, until even the gunfire faded, but knew better than to believe they were safe. They finally collapsed beneath an overhang of stone where the creek narrowed. Madison sank against the wall, shivering, eyes wide with shock. "Why us?" she whispered. "Why me?" Knelt beside her, voice low. "Because your father represents power, and power is currency. Taking you wasn't just about leverage. It was about showing the world that no one is untouchable, not even the president's family." Madison's jaw trembled. "And you, why target you?" His eyes hardened. "Because I'm proof they failed once, and the people behind this don't forgive failure." The girl stared at her, and for the first time saw not fear but anger. The kind of anger that steals. "I don't want to be their leverage," Madison whispered. "I don't want to be a pawn." His chest tightened. In the girl's voice she heard an echo of herself at 22, defiant, unyielding, burning against a world stacked to break her. "You won't be," said quietly. "Not while I'm breathing." They rested only long enough for the sky to pale with the first hint of dawn. Knew the network wouldn't stop. Not until they had Madison in their grip, which meant staying reactive was suicide. They had to go on offense. As they prepared to move, Madison asked the question that lodged itself like a blade. What if Reeves isn't the only one? What if this goes all the way up? Silence was answer enough, because she already knew it did. What happens when the hunted decide they've run enough? The forest was still damp with morning fog when stopped. She crouched, scanning the ground, her hand raised for silence. Madison froze behind her, breathing hard, clutching the damp blanket like a shield. "They'll widen their search grid by sunrise," whispered. "We'll lose them for a while, but not forever." Madison's voice cracked. "So what do we do? Keep running?" Turned, her eyes sharp, unyielding. "No, we stop running, we hit back." The words carried weight. 15 years of hiding compressed into a single choice. By midday, they reached an abandoned ranger station tucked into the woods. It was little more than a shack, half collapsed, but its rusted antenna still jutted skyward. Hands moved fast, coaxing life from old equipment, wiring her own radio from parts she had scavenged. Madison watched her silent until finally she asked, "Do you know who betrayed you, back then?" His hands stilled. Memories clawed their way back. The mission, the silence, the official report declaring her already gone before she staggered into camp. "I know who signed the report," she said, her voice low. "And I know who stood to gain. General Robert, he was the one who buried Ghost Watch. And now, he sits on the Joint Chiefs, still in power, still pulling strings." Madison's eyes widened. "You mean the people hunting me are?" "Not foreign," finished for her. "Not outsiders, ours, men who trade loyalty for influence, who think blood is just currency." The girl swallowed hard. "Then how do we fight something like that?" His gaze hardened. "With proof, with truth, and with teeth sharp enough that they choke on their own lies." She tapped the radio, listening as static gave way to coded chatter. Ghost Watch frequencies, old but alive. Buried in the noise she caught fragments, roots, orders, a name. It was enough. By nightfall, they moved again, this time not away but toward, into the city's underbelly where official lines blurred and silence had a price. Knew the contacts, the ghost still owing favors, the cracks in its machine. She wasn't just chasing shadows now. She was dragging them into the light. In a crumbling warehouse on the Potomac, she found what she needed, a hard drive, encrypted but damning. Shipment logs, financial transfers, coded orders linking network directly to the attempted kidnapping. Evidence that couldn't be buried under national security. As she tucked it into her pack, Madison whispered, "What if they kill us before we can show anyone?" Met her gaze. "Then someone else will. Proof doesn't need a name to survive, it just needs to breathe." But they didn't leave unseen. Floodlights snapped on. Figures emerged, rifles raised. Reeves at their center, his face a mask of control. "You never could just stay dead, could you?" he called. Pushed Madison behind her. "And you never could carry your own conscience." Reeves's smile was thin. "Wants the girl. He doesn't care what happens to you. Hand her over and maybe I'll let you crawl back into whatever hole you came from." His weapon was steady, her voice sharper than steel. "I already crawled once, never again." The standoff cracked like glass. Gunfire lit the warehouse, echoing off rusted beams. Moved with the precision of muscle memory, each shot measured, deliberate. Madison ducked low, gripping the pack with the hard drive like it was life itself. Reeves's men fell, one by one, but numbers pressed heavy. Shoulder burned from a grazing hit, her breaths ragged. Then Madison did something hadn't expected. She grabbed a fallen radio, shouted into it with steady defiance. "This is Madison, daughter of the president. The men with me are trying to kill me, and the man behind them is General Robert. I am alive, and I will not disappear." The warehouse froze. The transmission had gone out live on federal channels. Every agent, every team, every ear tuned to command just heard the words of the president's daughter. Reeves's face drained, his plan unraveled in seconds. "You stupid." Shot cut him off, clean and final. The silence afterward was deafening. Lowered her weapon, chest heaving. Madison stood in the middle of the warehouse, shaking but unbroken, the radio still in her hand. "You just made yourself the loudest voice in America," said, her tone half warning, half pride. Madison's chin lifted. "You told me strength isn't something you feel, it's something you do. I did it." His throat tightened. For the first time, she saw not a protected girl, but a fighter. Within the hour, federal teams stormed the warehouse, real ones this time. Hayes among them, his face thunderous as he took in the scene. He saw Reeves's body, the weapons, the hard drive. He saw Madison alive. And he saw, weapon lowered, eyes calm. "Ghosts don't usually leave evidence," he muttered. "Sometimes they have to," said. The fallout was swift. Was arrested within days, his empire crumbling under the weight of Madison's transmission, and the evidence had carried out. The network that had haunted her for 15 years finally fractured. But didn't stay for the headlines. She stood one last time outside the White House, Madison at her side. The girl's eyes were tired but fierce, her voice steady. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Hesitated. She had lived as a ghost for so long that the idea of being seen, truly seen, felt like another battlefield. But she leaned down, pressing a hand to Madison's shoulder. "You'll see me when you need me. That's how ghosts work." The girl nodded as if she understood. Maybe she did. And then walked away, past the gates, past the lights, back into the shadows where she had learned to live. For the first time, though, the shadows didn't feel like exile. They felt like choice. Because ghosts didn't need applause. They didn't need names or medals or recognition. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And in the silence that followed, Cross disappeared once more.